Scythe has stayed away from RGB for a long time, but they've finally given in. Howdy guys, Ponchato here, and today we're taking a look at the Scythe Kotetsu Mark II Tough Alliance Edition. Scythe teamed up with ASUS to co-brand this variant of the original Kotetsu Mark II, complete with multiple aesthetic changes and the big inclusion of RGB LEDs in the fan. Thanks to Scythe for sending this over, and let's get started. The Kotetsu Mark II Tough Edition was released just a few months ago in October of 2018 for $40 US. It's compatible with AM4, LGA 1151, and LGA 2066. And although Scythe doesn't give it a TDP rating, I'd estimate it can handle around 160 watts. As for overall dimensions, the Kotetsu is 154mm tall, 136 wide, and 85mm deep. That means it'll fit into pretty much any ATX or micro ATX case, and even some mini ITX cases. Before we get to all the details, let's check out the packaging and the contents. The front of the box is quite a bit different from Scythe's usual designs, with a much simpler layout and no crazy designs or font. The side, on the other hand, follows Scythe's usual spec chart with all the pertinent info you might need when picking it out. Looking inside, right on top is the box containing all the odds and ends for installation: mounting brackets, screws, fan clips, thermal paste, and instructions. One thing I've always liked about Scythe is how well done their installation manuals are. They clearly lay out which parts are for which sockets and have large, well annotated illustrations for each step. I'd really like to see more companies put in this level of effort to their documentation. After that, we have the RGB fan from Scythe's Kaze Flex lineup, and finally the Kotetsu Mark II heatsink itself. The heatsink is actually one of the coolest parts of the Kotetsu. Like many others, it's offset toward the rear of the motherboard to allow for unlimited RAM clearance, but it's also offset toward the top of the motherboard to give more clearance for graphics card backplates. It's only 1 centimeter up from being centered on the CPU socket, but that's a huge amount of space when you're dealing with the sometimes very tight space left over from larger graphics cards. Really smart design choice there. For the technical side, the Kotetsu's heatsink has 4 heat pipes, 6mm in diameter, par for the course, but also a unique Tough branded top plate with an urban digital camo pattern. I actually prefer this over a simple polished plate, if only because it's non-reflective, but it also is nice to have the heat pipe caps covered for a cleaner, more finished look. Looking at the fan, we have Scythe's 120mm Kaze Flex RGB, which is a very recent addition to their lineup. Like the non-RGB version, it's rated for 300 to 1200 RPM and uses a fluid dynamic bearing, which, when it comes to noise level and lifespan, is near the top of the list. The LEDs are powered and controlled by a standard 50/50 4-pin LED header, so you can control the colors with any motherboard that has a 12-volt header. The level of control you have will depend on your motherboard's BIOS or software though. On my MSI B350M Gaming Pro, that means it's limited to a handful of preset colors and patterns. All the same, these LEDs are bright and colorful and will fit in nicely with any RGB build. The fan also has bright yellow rubber pads on the corners to help decouple it from the heatsink and reduce noise. Personally, I would have preferred gray or black pads, but in any case, it is much nicer to have rubber mounts than not. And while it only comes with 1 fan, it does include a second set of fan clips if you want to add another in push-pull. I still need to do some formal testing, but from my experience, you can gain a lot of performance with push-pull setups, particularly at the lower end of fan speed and therefore noise. But that's for another video. For now, we'll take a look at installation. The Kotetsu uses Scythe's latest 3rd generation high-precision mounting system, which is a mouthful of marketing speak that means it's easy to install. AM4 systems are especially easy to work with since you don't even need to replace the stock backplate, though the setup for LGA sockets is very similar. It starts with putting the 4 spacers over the backplate mounting holes, rubber side up. Then you place the AM4 brackets on the spacers and tighten down the included screws to hold them in place. With the brackets mounted, you add a dab of the included thermal paste to the center of the processor. It's now ready for the heatsink, so after peeling off the protective plastic cover on the bottom, you just line up the already mounted screws on the heatsink with the threaded holes in the AM4 brackets. Alternate tightening them down so the bar and brackets tighten properly and the heatsink is mounted. The last step is to mount the fan, which just involves holding it in place and using the fan mounts to hook it into the heatsink. Plug in the PWM and LED headers, making sure to match the polarity of the LED cable with your motherboard's header, and it's all ready to go. Scythe has gotten their mounting systems down pretty much perfectly. From start to finish, this took me less than 10 minutes, and I'm pretty slow and methodical when it comes to installing stuff. And unlike what happens normally, I actually did it without messing anything up. As much as it pains me to say this, reading the directions is not for chumps and actually makes life much easier. Anyway, now that it's installed, you can see that the Kotetsu is completely clear of the RAM slots and well away from the top PCIe slot, owing to its offset design. Interference with tall memory or large graphics cards won't be an issue with this cooler. But now let's go to the benchmarks. My test bench is a Ryzen 3 1200 overclocked to 4.1 GHz at 1.35 volts. The graphics card is a passively cooled GT1030 from MSI, and thanks to Seasonic for the 850 watt Focus Plus power supply. While the graphics card and power supply can run fanless, meaning the only sound coming from the system is from the CPU cooler itself. Load temperatures are taken with the CPU running Prime 95, and cooling results are reported as deltas, degrees above ambient temperature. First, we'll look at the idle results. These are the noise levels and temperature deltas with no programs running and the fans at their minimum RPM. Like most coolers I've tested, the Kotetsu can spin down its fans low enough to be effectively inaudible at idle. A 120mm fan spinning at around 300 RPM just isn't going to make much noise. The idle temperature is roughly in the middle of the pack at 3.4 degrees Celsius, though idle temperature carries very little weight here because the CPU isn't under any kind of load. Now we'll look at the load results. These measurements are taken with Prime 95 running and the fans at full speed to show the cooler's upper limits. In terms of temperature, the Kotetsu is right around the middle of the pack, 35.5 degrees Celsius, not far behind the Gamex 400 from Deepcool and the Ninja 5 also from Scythe. It does great in the noise department though, only 42.6 decibels, which is the third quietest cooler I've tested. Now my favorite graph, noise versus temperature. This is under load with the fan speed varied from 100% down to the minimum speed the cooler can run without thermal throttling the processor. This graph is laid out so you can easily compare the cooler's noise levels at a given temperature or temperature at a given noise level. This curve also shows whether increasing the airflow would help. I think the Kotetsu is a great candidate for adding a second fan for two reasons. The low speed performance would be dramatically improved since airflow would roughly double while the noise level would barely increase, and because 1200 RPM is a relatively low upper limit for the fan's speed. Adding a second fan could drop the temperature by a few more degrees, though that would come at the cost of possibly much increased noise. Alternatively, if Scythe simply increased the top end of the Kaze Flex's RPM range to something like 16 or 1800 RPM, you could accomplish the same temperature decrease at the upper end. Now here's the chart of cooler scores, a combined rating of temperature and noise. You can think of this as a metric to compare coolers running at their optimal speed, balanced between cooling performance and noise level. The Kotetsu lands at about the middle of the pack here, owing mostly to its middle of the pack temperature performance. Keep in mind though, it is only 2 points behind what was for a long time the upper limit of scores here. But the score by itself doesn't show the whole picture, as you'll see when we look at this. Here is the chart of cooler score per dollar to show price to performance. The Kotetsu hits closer to the top of the list here because of its relatively low price, landing right between the Hyper 212 Evo from Cooler Master and the Fuma Revision B from Scythe. Simply put, $40 for a CPU cooler of this performance level is a pretty good deal, especially considering all the aesthetic improvements that you don't get from most similarly priced coolers. Overall, the Kotetsu is a nice option if RGB and aesthetics are part of your requirements. Even with the lights off, it's a good looking cooler and cleanly designed. I do think it's a bit of an oversight for Scythe to not include a basic LED controller for people who are running on older or lower end motherboards without an RGB header. But on the other hand, they were trying to hit a certain price point, and keeping it under $40 doesn't allow for a ton of bells and whistles. It also would have been nice for the thermal paste to come in a closable syringe instead of a one-time use pack, since it's way more than enough for a single application. But these are minor gripes compared to the value you get. So the all-important question: should you buy it? If you're putting together a low-end to mid-range system, want RGB, and want really good noise performance, then the Kotetsu is for you. People new to PC building are also a good target audience for the Kotetsu because it is seriously very easy to install. Scythe definitely has one of the best mounting systems out there. It's fast and their instructions are clear and easy to understand. For someone new to PC building, those are hugely important factors. Even for me, it's always really nice to get a CPU cooler that's just easy to work with. The Kotetsu, on top of being very competent and quiet, is extremely user-friendly, both on your hands and your wallet. And if that sounds like the cooler for you, click the link in the description to pick one up for yourself. Hit subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified of new videos as soon as they're up. So guys, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe, and I want to hear from you. Do you agree with Scythe making the jump to RGB, or should they stick with unlit coolers? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, I hope I helped, and I'll see you in the next video. Unlit. Bro, this cooler's so not lit. I should do a whole review like a frat bro. Yo guys, ponchato here, and like, I don't even care about computers or whatever, but I'm like bomb at Fortnite, so I just do it because I can. That would be so obnoxious. Now I want to.